Hey everybody, Zach again at newtutorial.com, coming to make another video for you today. Listen, I get a lot of questions all the time about when a day begins, and when is the Sabbath? And there's all kinds of people out there who will have ideas about, maybe the Sabbath is the lunar cycle. We need to follow that Sabbath, and the Sabbath ends up being on a Tuesday, or there's all kinds of methods that people today are using to try to determine when the Sabbath is and when a day begins. I would submit to you that if you do the research and you just look through the Bible and just tune out everyone else, look through your Bible, read the scriptures, you're going to find that the day begins at sunset, at the time when the sun goes down. That's when the day begins. And you'll see all throughout your Torah from even till even, or you'll see throughout your Torah that you wash and are unclean until even. Why? Because that's when the new day begins. There's something that was pointed out to me early on in my walk when I started to hear all these different ideas about when the Sabbath begins and when a day begins. And the person who presented this to me said, Zach, do you know that there are many types of Jews in the world? You have Orthodox Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews, Reformed Jews, Karaite Jews, you have Samaritan Jews, you have all these different types of Jews in the world, and they disagree on everything. Absolutely, they disagree on everything. The two things they don't disagree on and that they all hold in common is when the Sabbath is. Shabbat. Shabbat is on the Roman calendar's Saturday. Just because it's on the Roman calendar Saturday, sorry, it just happens. They all agree when the Shabbat is. So if there was some kind of, off the, out in the middle of nowhere Jewish sect that followed Tuesday or went through some kind of lunar cycle to determine their Shabbat, well then, okay, we might want to investigate and see, if they've been doing it all these generations that way, then we might want to investigate that and see why. But the problem is there's not, okay? All of the sects of Judaism and Jews, different types of Jews, Karaite, Reformed, Ultra-Orthodox, doesn't matter, all of them, they all know when the Shabbat is, and they all agree when the day begins. The day begins at sundown. There's a good clue. I'm just saying, okay? There's a good clue. And if you go out throughout your scriptures and you look at this, at when a day begins, you will see it's very clear at even. Evening comes before morning. Evening is when the day begins. And so there's some people out there who are trying to, do some linguistical gymnastics and, scriptural gymnastics to show you that the day begins at noon, the day begins at morning. And so, no, I'm sorry. I'm just coming out and I'm telling you, do your own research on this. Forget all this other stuff. Just look at what your script said, the text says. And, it's always a good clue to understand, some of these Jewish sects, what do they do? I'm not saying they do everything right. Absolutely not. Because they disagree on everything else. They have no agreement with anything else. But there's one thing they all agree on is when is the Shabbat and when does it begin. I'm just saying. All right, we'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.